Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit to this last video I did. I still have my puppy thing, and there's two more things I need to show you that I forgot to add to the last video. One thing is more of just a design preference, and it's a term that I call tangencies. Anytime we have things that touch at certain points, they can cause a distraction. That's probably the easiest way to put it. And so I look for places where things touch. Now, in some cases where things overlap, it's okay. So notice the dog overlaps the word puppy in the title. One place where things are maybe kind of strange is notice how this capital P grows out of the dog's head. Now, maybe most people don't notice that, and I think in this case we're okay, but I definitely noticed it and I paid attention to it and I made a decision. So as long as you're noticing it, looking for it, and making a decision. Another idea of a tangency is imagine this subtitle called haircuts. Where is it? Right here, this subtitle. Imagine, watch what happens here. I'll make this a little bigger so you can see. If I had this where this S was right on the edge of the dog, that's what we call a tangency. And we want to avoid those because it can create distractions. It's better if you have some space. And this is a principle of proximity, is to not have tangents. I do have a tangent. I think that this is pretty close right here where the T is touching the edge of the dog. So how do I fix that? I can just move just so slightly that text so that it's not right at the edge of the dog's leg. And that's what we call tangencies. And I look for those quite a bit to see what could possibly be causing some kind of distraction. All right. So as you do your own projects, review it for tangencies. And that's part of the principle of proximity, is making sure that information has proper spacing between them. And you don't want things adjacent or touching because it can be confusing and distracting. Another thing I wanted to show, let's see, I just had a brain freeze. What else was I going to show? Let's show how we save this. So if we had this finished project and we need to send it, we wouldn't send them the Photoshop file. So we need to go to File, and then we do Save As. And I'm still on my desktop. And we come down here to Format. Now you could save it as a JPEG. For the class project, you'll save a JPEG just to keep the file size small. JPEG stores millions of colors, but a TIFF file saves billions of colors. So you can have some image loss when you do a JPEG. Most of the time, you won't be able to tell the image loss, all right? So you would probably be just fine with a JPEG, but if you want absolutely no image loss from the work that you've done, go ahead and choose a TIFF file. Now for the class exercise, do JPEG because it'll be a smaller file. TIFFs will be larger, but just for a professional product, if you were to send this to a printer, they would want the TIFF file. They could take a JPEG, but they would probably prefer a TIFF. So those are really your two output options for final. So I'll go ahead, just for the sake of this, choose the TIFF, and you hit save. TIFF has some options. Different people are going to do different things. I generally have it discard the layers. I save my layers in my Photoshop file, and I can always go back to that and make changes. Likewise, I'll change image compression to none. You can choose, if you know what you're doing, you could choose some of these things. I also usually change it to an IBM PC byte order. I think nowadays this doesn't matter so much, but in the past, PC computers had problems opening up Macintosh bit order files, Maybe those issues are completely gone nowadays, but maybe out of habit, I still choose IBM. And then you just hit OK and you put that to your desktop. And you essentially have two files now. So one will be your Photoshop file, which you can always go back to and edit. And then you'll have a TIFF file that would be the final file that you would send to the printer. And there was one other thing I was going to think of, and maybe I'm just not thinking of it. I'm looking. Oh, layer management. If you notice, I've created some folders in my Photoshop file. And just to get, eventually your layers can get kind of messy and you're trying to find things. So let's say I wanted to create all of these white transparent things and put them into a folder to better organize this. So I click the bottom layer, and then while holding the shift key I can click the top one. This selects all the layers in between. If I wanted to select one layer at a time, I would hold the option or the command button, and that lets you choose different layers at a time and one at a time. Shift, everything in between. Command, one thing at a time. And that's pretty consistent across all Adobe softwares. So with this one here, I have all this white spray and these circles. So now I come down here to the folder and it says create a new group. And as soon as I click that, everything I had selected gets put into that folder. And there's an arrow key that lets me expand that so I can see them again, but I can collapse it, and it helps reduce the number of layers that I see and makes the management easier. And I could just call this white effects background. Something that describes what you've done and it makes sense to you. I'll do this again. For instance, here we have Meet, Chuck, 2016 Champ, and the page number. I can select all of these and put this into a folder, and I can call this subtitle 1 or whatever you want. And you notice that I've already done that with the other subtitles on the page. And now as a folder, if I select the folder, everything in the folder gets moved or edited at the same time. So it helps you organize your layers, and it also helps you manage more than one layer at one time and keep things together. Hope that was helpful, and that was my little augment video for the magazine cover project.